Welcome to America with Lloyd Chapman and Bruce the Taurus. It's Thursday, November 7th, 2 days after the election. Lloyd, how are you?
I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. Um, if Harris had been elected, a lot of people say this, right? But I actually thought about just becoming a Canadian citizen. I spent half my time in Canada anyway, but I would have been scared if if Harris had been elected. I would have been really scared. Um, but yeah, so I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that Trump was elected.
Well, tell me what you would have been scared about.
Um, I don't think Harris is, an independent person. I think she's being controlled by people. I think Harris is a puppet for some very, very powerful people. And I think Biden was too. And I put this on my uh, post on Twitter the other day, but Biden's not the president. He's got significant cognitive decline. I think everybody knows that, right? That's why he's not running for president. And yet today he's the president. So who's running America? Uh, I was very upset last week when I saw that aircraft carriers and missile destroyers and B-52s and B-2 were heading towards the Middle East. Who did that? Who made that decision?
We
Was that
talked,
Joe Biden? I don't remember seeing anything on television about Congress voting for that or approving that. In fact, what scared me was that it wasn't on TV at all. So, but anyway, so on Harris, the reason Harris scared me was I don't think that she's an independent person like Trump or Bobby Kennedy or Jill Stein or anybody. I think she's just a puppet. And by
and
the way, the people that are running her to me are some of the most evil people in the world. When you look at what they're doing, what they're for,
yeah,
yeah, those people scare me.
I'm in agreement. People like Naomi Wolf, who's been a long time, very astute observer of our culture, but even specifically presidential politics. She was a consultant for, I think, the Clinton White House and definitely for Vice President Gore's campaign in 2000. And in July, when Biden suddenly stepped down, and then a few days later, Harris was declared the anointed nominee, she meticulously documented, Lloyd, all these anomalies that indicate what was so weird, haphazard, almost frantic, very uncoordinated. The way Biden stepped down, it was a note, an image of a note on Twitter. It wasn't on the regular stationery. It didn't have the real signature or any signature. It was not rolled out the way decades and decades and decades of official announcements from the president. I think it took days or a week before he actually spoke to the nation, I think in a record. So the point is all that to support your impression that there's a committee, there are some other people who are pulling their strings, and there is nothing more frightening than that. But that's consistent after how the Democrat committee and the party just wiped out primaries to choose first Biden as the nominee. There was no democratic process to choose her as the nominee. That puts us in the hands of secret powers. And that's as banana republic as I ever want to see us get. It's quite frightening. It would have been quite frightening to continue with her as opposed to Trump. There's a lot of people have a lot of concerns about Trump. I know that you don't, and I'm glad he won over her. And so now that he has won, Lloyd, what else have you thought in the last 2 days? What kind of future do you see? How bright is the future now that Trump has won?
I think it's going to be an extremely bright future, and I think all the people that hate Trump and wanted Harris to be the president will will be surprised what happens in the next 4 years, and quite frankly, in the next 8 years. I don't think that some Democrats going to come in and be elected after Trump. I think it's going to be J.D. Vance or somebody like that, right? Tulsi Gabbard. So I think it's going to be amazing. In fact, to tell you the truth, I think it's going to be historic, and I think it'll be the most historic administration in history because of Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, Nicole Shanahan, and Elon Musk, and JD Vance, people like that. Vance is a smart. He's super smart guy, right? And I think from what I've seen Kennedy talk about his conversations with Trump, um, Trump kind of admitted he didn't know how to be the president. He actually didn't know, like, how do you do this, right? Um, he didn't know he had to fill 6,000 jobs, and he had to turn it over to the lobbyist. So I think the first Trump administration was completely run by lobbyists. I think Trump was kind of disconnected. I think that's the way he was used to operating. I've talked to some people on the campaign, and they said that he won't listen to other people, right? He's very, stubborn. But I think this time, I think he's going to listen to Bobby Kennedy. I think he's going to listen to Elon Musk and Tulsi and Nicole and JD and Tucker Carlson. And those are people that are logical and intelligent, reasonable people that know the problems that are going on in the country and know how to solve them.
For years, maybe decades, I have read and followed Bobby Jr. and have been immensely impressed with the similarity between his values, his view of America, with the goals and the views of his uncle and his father,
Yeah,
whom everyone should study, President Kennedy and Senator
absolutely.
Robert Kennedy and Bobby Jr. And the fact that here's the greatest thing about Trump. He's smart enough to listen to Bobby Jr. And he's been smart enough to go shoulder to shoulder with him for the last couple of weeks and say, I'm going to let him do this, that, and the other thing. And if he has the nerve, Trump, to back down on that, he really deserves to be abandoned with any support. On the other hand, if he comes through with some or a lot or all of these wonderful things, we do have reasons to be cheerful. And everyone who's freaked out about Trump, who has thinks that they're convinced about how evil and awful he is, I'll just say this about him. And then I want to ask you about how to make America great again, because I know you've prepared some stuff to share. In my estimation, and I'm just someone who's read tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of American history and has studied the presidents and have studied our history in the last 60 years since John F. Kennedy. And what I saw in Trump's first campaign was amazing rhetoric. It was the kind of stuff I would have said, diagnosing what was wrong with the country and what needs to be done to fix it. Unfortunately, in his first term, in my opinion, he only did a teeny tiny percentage of the things he
Yeah.
promised to do. But
Yeah.
still, that's miraculously better than anything we've had for 60 years. Okay. Now it seems like he's had his eyes opened, and with what he's saying he's going to do, he's got a catastrophic flaw in how he does not know or care about how he comes across to people who don't agree with him. And I'm going to talk about that before the end. But I just wanted to get on the table, kind of shoulder to shoulder with you about my qualified belief that Trump will do anything good. But my fingers are crossed. They really, really are. So do you want to talk about how to make America great again? And I think some stuff that you've posted on X recently, right?
Yeah. America's not a democracy. The government is run by the special interest. If the special interests want a law passed, that law is going to get passed, because if you're in Congress and you don't do what the special interests want, they will make you wish you had, right? They'll make you wish you had. So if you're in Congress, you have to go with what the special interest, because they basically own that town. They own the government. They run the government, and the government is not run based on what's best for the American people. It's run based upon what the special interests want. That's why, for example, that in 2024, companies like I think Exxon and Chevron won't pay any income tax. I think Amazon will pay, like, a tenth of a percent or 1% tax. I pay a lot of taxes, and I don't see why a billionaire would pay a tax rate that's different than mine, right? So, but I've got an article here. It's about 16 companies that don't pay taxes, and it's shocking when you look at some of these huge corporations, particularly oil companies and Apple and Amazon. They're not paying taxes. Let's go into my list of how to make America great again. Number one, we've got to make Fortune 500 firms pay taxes. So Citizens United, I think, was based on the fact that a corporation, is a person, right? Well, great. persons pay taxes. So you can't say, oh, in terms of political donations, I'm a person. And then of course in taxing, oh, I'm a corporation, whatever. So it's just insane to let multi-billion-dollar corporations make billions and billions and billions in profits and not pay taxes.
Yep.
But that's an example of the kind of control they have over our Congress, right?
Yep.
So number one to make America great again is get these large corporations paying some minimum tax rate. I think 25%, is a good number, right? By the way, the funny thing is when you hear, sometimes Trump talking, he talks about cutting corporate taxes. That's ridiculous. They're not paying taxes. The Government Accountability Office did a report not too long ago, said 34% of the largest, most profitable companies in America pay zero federal income tax. So yeah, you don't need to cut taxes for corporations, right? Just
Right.
the opposite. You need to raise their taxes. So the
And
first thing
that's
America,
consistent with a critique of Trump is that he's just as much establishment as anybody else. For all his rhetoric of being an outsider and he's going to drain the swamp, he didn't do it. Now there's a chance he might do it this time. We'll see.
yeah, last time the swamp ran his campaign.
Indeed.
Drain the swamp. That's just ridiculous. The swamp dwellers
Yeah.
ran his campaign, but they're not going
Okay.
to do it this time, right? All right. So here's my list I put on X, and again, I'd love to people follow me on X. I put some good stuff up there. Number one is close the border.
Okay.
Close the border. That's another indication, by the way, that America is not a democracy. Do the American people want 20, 30 million illegal aliens flowing across the border? I've seen reputable stories that I believe that 13,000 people that came across the border convicted murderers. That was on NBC. They're not, conspiracy nuts, right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
close the frickin' border, baby. And
Yeah.
and anyone who entered the country illegally needs to be sent back. I don't see why we should let, for example, the 13,000 convicted murderers, yeah, get them the hell out of here,
Well,
right?
definitely people with a criminal record and who've or recently committed crimes. About the rest, I've got to study that some more, but I'm totally on board with let's find the people with criminal records. Let's
Yeah,
find and do something about all those who came in here who wouldn't have been allowed in here had they been screened by a
yeah,
logical, sensible, legal screening application process that we used to adhere to.
yeah. I think we have to all admit the fact that the Biden administration let those people in to try to win the election, right? That
Well, it
that,
depends
that
how
was the whole.
many who were able to vote who weren't citizens and
Yeah,
wherever that happened. That's an
yeah.
insanity.
My next one is we need to end all foreign aid. We're broke. We're literally bankrupt. We're 35 trillion in debt. The national debt goes up another $1 trillion every 100 days. In 2025, the single largest expense to the United States of America is going to be interest on the national debt. We cannot be giving out billions of dollars and our tax dollars when we're bankrupt, and we need that money here in America.
Right.
To
And
me,
we,
again,
yeah.
another indication America is not a democracy. After the hurricane, FEMA and the SBA ran out of money. So tax-paying Americans are drowning in their homes. They don't have food, water, adequate medical care, electricity, and we're giving billions of dollars to a foreign country. What the hell is that about? I don't think
Yeah.
any American would vote for that. So we need to end all foreign aid. Just nobody gets any more money from America, at least until the deficit is down to zero.
There
Okay.
should definitely be an instant moratorium on it. And then there
Yeah.
should also be like the step two of that is to analyze who have we been giving it to and why? What are we propping up? Is it to just maintain our own bullying military presence over there? Is it to strong arm the recipients of the aid to do things that benefit our corporations
Huh.
to the detriment of the prosperity and health and sovereignty of those foreign peoples? It's a multi-tiered screwing that we're giving these countries actually with the aid. And a point I think you've made, which nobody else is talking about, has some or a lot of that money come back to those in the United States who gave it as kickbacks?
Yeah.
Come on.
All right. Let's just talk about that briefly. um, In June of 23, Kamala Harris broke a record for the lowest approval rating of any VP in modern history. She was so unpopular that you go back and find articles that the senior people at the DNC didn't even want her on the ticket with Biden in 2024, right? And yet, all of a sudden, she pops up running for president. She raised more money than any president in history. I believe she raised twice as much money as any presidential candidate in the history of America. So, how does the least popular VP in the history of America pop up and raise twice as much money? I would bet my life that some of the money that we gave in foreign aid was laundered back into her campaign because the people that got the foreign aid want more foreign aid. They want to keep that money flowing. And they knew if Kamala Harris gets elected, that money's going to keep on flowing,
I
right?
think there's a good
If Trump,
chance that, yeah, I think money raised like that is documentable by a big ticket candidate by her. But we'd have to look at those sources. Are they front
yeah.
organizations for some back channel nonsense?
Well, let's just say something happened that had never let's say everything about Harris had never happened before in the history of America, right? Everything about it never happened before, right? By the way, you said something about Biden dropped out on Twitter, something like that, right? It's possible that they didn't even tell him. You realize that? They didn't
Oh,
even
no,
tell.
that's a distinct possibility. That's how
Yeah,
cloudy that weekend was. It's nonsense.
yeah. They, so let's just say this: it's possible the people that I say that actually run the government could have put that out there and then told him later,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
My memory, probably from Naomi Wolf's reporting, is that was posted publicly before the White House communicated that decision to Biden's campaign, assuming
yeah,
there's some separation there, and I believe there is, it
yeah.
was. So yeah, you're right. It's a cloudy mess. Yeah.
Every American needs to be afraid. Who are these people that are running the government?
Um,
So Biden has got cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, something like that.
yeah.
He's not all there. Harris is, in my view, not that bright. She's not that intelligent. Who's running the country?
It's if not afraid, we should
Who
be
is it?
mightily concerned.
We need to pass legislation prohibiting foreign governments from lobbying Congress. We don't need
Nice.
foreign countries influencing our government. No foreign country is going to come into America and lobby Congress for something that's good for Americans. They're going to come lobby Congress something that's good for
Right.
them, which is money. So
Yeah.
anytime you let a foreign government lobby our Congress, they want our money. So no foreign government's going to come to America and lobby for clean water for Americans. No foreign government's going to come to America and lobby for no carcinogens in food. They're going to come in and lobby. They want guns and airplanes and money, right?
Right.
We're broke.
Or
So
the
it gets,
ability or the ability to donate to the campaigns of different candidates so they can own and control whoever
yeah,
wins different levels of elected office. Now, Lloyd, I'm pretty certain that foreign countries with a presence here, like through their embassies and things like that, or foreign organizations that do want to influence legislation, have to register, I believe, as a foreign agent. And you're raising the question of something of controversy. An American group, a group of Americans can form a political action committee on behalf of another country or foreign peoples, and they skirt the requirements and
yeah,
the disclosures that are required of a foreign influencing body. And I think APAC is qualifies as such a controversial group that is lobbying on behalf of Israel. It's just an example, and I think that's a 60-year-old controversy. Now,
yeah,
in
yeah.
my
We can do a whole.
ignorance, their status may have changed. For all I know, they are registered as a foreign agent and adhere to the requirements, but I don't think so. That's just an example of how
Yeah,
crucial this point is.
that's a whole show.
Well, let's cue that up.
Yeah, that's a whole
That's
show.
a
But
mental
let's
note.
just say this: if I were to write this law, I would say that foreign governments or any organization representing a foreign government is prohibited from lobbying Congress. So
It's a great
we
point.
want to end the influence of foreign governments in any way that it can happen, right? So
Right.
that's
It should stay in its lane. It should go through the
yeah,
State Department via the foreign policy that the president is at the head of.
yeah. We can't allow foreign governments to influence our elections. We can't allow them to put pressure on members of
Right.
Congress and
Right.
donate to Congress. So
Right.
all foreign governments need to be out of government or any organization representing foreign government. All right.
Right.
Next one. It's time for the Pentagon to pass an audit. The Pentagon
Wow.
has never passed an audit. If you go to your computer and search on 35 trillion missing at the Pentagon, there's multiple stories. They call it a Pentagon black hole. So the Pentagon doesn't have to pass an audit. They can do
Right.
anything they want to, and I believe that the Pentagon, by the way, has used some of the $35 trillion that seems to be unaccounted for to lobby Congress. Why isn't Congress outraged? Why isn't there
Ah,
televised national, like Watergate type hearings about where the money is in the Pentagon? No matter what the Pentagon does, nobody does anything because um,
they're bought.
if you're in Congress and you challenge the Pentagon, they will make you wish your parents had never met, right? They've
Yeah,
got and we need to end the Pentagon's power, to lobby Congress. It's a federal agency. Federal agencies shouldn't be lobbying Congress, but I guarantee you the Pentagon does. So, and anyway, it's time for the Pentagon to pass an audit. And by the way, it's not on my list here, but we need to cut the Pentagon budget. If I were the president, I would close probably 90% of the overseas military bases, but we need to shrink the Pentagon's stranglehold on the government and everything like that. They're just squandering money. They're getting us into
right.
endless wars.
And
The
if,
Pentagon,
yeah,
the Pentagon is run by the military-industrial complex, right?
yeah,
And it's
which exists for its own existence,
yeah, it's
which
like
has
laying
created 70 years of propaganda and demonization of this evil dictator, that evil dictator, to make us
exactly.
think we need this far-flung military, hundreds of military bases around the world, because if we let down our guard, boom, we're going to get attacked, and that's nonsense. So to address that, shrinking the budget rightly addresses reality of, are we so threatened? And are we
So,
if we're threatened, isn't it because of how we have bullied the rest of the world as this far-flung empire? Back to passing an audit, it's simultaneous with the issue of, can we demand that our representatives in Congress do their job, like howl because the Pentagon can't account for $35 trillion. You're absolutely right. Look how urgent that investigation needs to be. Where did that money go? Lloyd, if 90% of it somehow went to bribes to just make people rich, we're still talking about $3.5 trillion that may have gone into esoteric and advanced and far out weaponry, the kind of surveillance that we can't even imagine. That's
yeah,
eons beyond what we get inklings of by whistleblowers and other, people who study the tech. It's it's mind-blowing to imagine the kind of technology that's out there.
I posted a video on my Twitter account yesterday that I would love every American to see. I don't know who this guy is. I recognize I've seen him before, but he said something, by the way, that I believe to be true. America's not threatened by Iran. Iran's not a threat to America. Iran doesn't have a nuclear arsenal. They don't have the ability to get them over here. So Iran is not a threat to America. It never has been and it never will be. Nobody can threaten America. We're a giant island. We've got the Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean around us. You can't invade America. You can't invade this country. We're invasion proof. We got the largest nuclear arsenal in the history of mankind. We got this huge military. No, was China going to attack us and land landing craft, on the beach in Malibu? No. Um, so yeah, America doesn't need to be worried about invaded by anybody. We don't want to get into a nuclear war with Russia, right? But quite frankly,
Well, the people
I got
don't.
I've got a bunch of Russian friends, and the Russian people, the American people, get along great. It's our leaders, that are the problem. But the Russian people, the American people, even China, we all get along just fine, right? It's
We
our
have,
governments that are problem. But
our
anyway,
government and our media
yeah,
was
we
basically
don't.
taken over for the last 70 years, and
Yeah,
it's really bringing us to the brink. There are some really, really smart historians who've looked at this in depth, who are former participants as diplomats at the negotiating tables, who say we are closer to nuclear holocaust
that's
today
right.
than at any
Than ever
time since,
before.
well, since 62, the Cuban
Yeah,
Missile Crisis.
yeah,
It's like they say it's 30 seconds to midnight or it's 60 seconds to midnight. It's perilous right now, the
yeah. And by the
stupidity
way,
of our policies.
and who did that? Who's responsible for that? Did you vote for someone to get us closer to World War III or nuclear war than ever before? Who did that? Quite frankly, in my view, there's this secret group of people, that are running things. They're the ones that put us closer to World War III. For what? What is
There's a
war?
cabal basically called the neocons who first, have risen in prominence and presence in all administrations to greater or lesser degrees since the 1970s, but they are entrenched. They were entrenched in the Obama administration. They got entrenched into the Trump administration, but Trump held them a little more at bay than they would have preferred. But they run the Biden administration, and the nonsense that has happened in the Ukraine by the direct involvement of Biden to cause the war over there, to bring us nose to nose with Russia, and this deadly situation is at their feet.
And they're escalating by sending all this military equipment over to the Middle East. Yeah, they're escalating it. They're getting us closer. By the way, this reminds me, Eisenhower knew this back, what was it, 1953 or something like that, right? The military industrial complex speech.
Well,
So
61,
Eisenhower,
1961, but yeah.
61. Yeah, Eisenhower warned us about this in 1961 about the growing power of the military industrial complex. And boy, was he right. So,
Well,
by the
that's
way,
a fascinating. It's a fascinating topic
yeah,
because he facilitated it for 8 years as a two-term president. He let the CIA and the State Department run amok, and
yeah.
3 days before he left office, for posterity, for his conscience, so his grandchildren wouldn't think he was a dick, he gave a pretty decent speech.
You said the neocons. Who are they? If the whoever is responsible for getting us closer to World War III, I'd put them in prison, right? Whoever
Wow.
made that decision, get them out of government. Get them out of the government. You
There
know,
are names
so
that could fairly be
name
accused of treason. Yeah.
name a neocon. Give me the name of a neocon right now.
Well, the Grand Poobah is deceased. Zbigniew Brzezinski.
No,
Uh,
but someone that's alive today, who's a
who
neocon today?
qualifies would be John Bolton, would be Victoria Nuland, or maybe I have her first wrong, the woman who was in the State Department who sabotaged peace in Ukraine, sabotaged Zelensky. Zelensky ran for president of Ukraine on the platform, we want no war, we'll have no war with Russia. And he negotiated a deal with Putin a couple of times. And Biden sent foreign British Prime Minister, I believe Boris Johnson, over there to scuttle the deal.
I've heard that. Yeah,
Yeah, to make it plain to Putin that he had to escalate, the incursion or invasion that he first started in February 2022. Within weeks, they were negotiating a cessation and a solution to it because Zelensky saw that we can't do this. But then we promised all kinds of support. We are doing to the Ukraine through the puppet Zelensky what we did to Vietnam through our puppet over there, and then we let him get overthrown. And then there was a string of coups in the first couple of years after Diem was killed in a coup in '63 to let the United States come in and rape and pillage Vietnam.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's a money go round, Lloyd, like we're
yeah.
describing. It's
Well,
unbelievable.
whoever's responsible for getting America into a position where Putin threatened to use nuclear weapons, get those people out of government. We need to end the endless wars, which tags onto that, right? No more wars, no more American soldiers, boots on the ground anywhere. We don't need that. Okay, here's one that's important to me. People in America do not realize and do not know, and Donald Trump doesn't know, that 99.9% of all the companies in America are small businesses. That is it's almost like against the law to mention that on national television. 99.9% of all American companies are small businesses, and the only agency to help them is the Small Business Administration, and it's got this little teeny tiny budget. To tell you the truth, the Small Business Administration has essentially been closed. Think of how stupid it is for any politician to cut the budget for the only agency to help the companies, the 99.9% of companies in America. By the way, small business responsible for 98% of all net new jobs, half the gross domestic product, half the private sector workforce, over 90% of U.S. exports, and they've closed the SBA. It's essentially closed. By the way, Trump did that. You can look up does Trump hate small business and see that article, right? So the Small Business Administration needs to become one of the largest agencies in government. It needs to have a budget of a minimum of $10 billion a year, probably more like $25 billion. All the offices that Bush Jr. closed need to be reopened. But the Small Business Administration needs to be one of the largest, most powerful agencies in federal government because 99.9% of all U.S. firms are small businesses. And because Washington is run by Fortune 500 firms, they're anti-small business. By the way, Donald Trump, I voted for Trump. I campaigned for Trump. I'm thrilled when Trump was elected. Donald Trump is documentably anti-small business. You cannot find one policy in his lifetime that benefited small businesses. And by the way, some people try to tell me, well, he did this would help small businesses. No, something specific, right? He cut, taxes for big businesses specifically, right? He should have cut taxes for small businesses. So the SBA needs to be reopened. All the field offices around the country need to be reopened because our economy is a small business economy.
This is so powerful. Everyone needs to go to your site. You created the American Small Business League, ASBL.com, and get up to speed about that. If anyone wanted one thread to pull and devote their life of activism, it's for the cause of America's small businesses. You're providing an invaluable education to highlight this and work for it and sue the government for 35 years, as you've had, to get the government to steer the contracts to small businesses that the law demands. And every president and every Congress has avoided fulfilling their obligation to make the federal government steer 23% of its contracts to small businesses. And the explosion of new job creation and the boost to the economy and the increase in our standards of living, unfortunately, it's a painful tragedy and symptom of how the federal government has been captured for decades by big money and big business. It's like Congress is now filled with corporate lobbyists. They're not harassed by corporate lobbyists. They fairly are corporate lobbyists, except for the odd exception.
If Donald Trump does not adopt Bobby Kennedy's economic stimulus program for the middle class, it will be impossible for him to make America great again. It can't be done because Donald Trump only focuses on, Fortune 500 firms. Fortune 500 firms haven't created one net new job since 1980. And again, the Government Accountability Office said 34% pay no taxes. So Donald Trump needs to shift his focus from, trying to bring back manufacturing to America to comply with the 1953 Small Business Act, give small businesses the 23% the law mandates, and adopt Bobby Kennedy's economic stimulus program. If he doesn't do that, he's an idiot. That's so important. All right, here's my next one. Women are half the population. They own 42% of the businesses. And companies owned by men, are getting around 97% of all federal spending. So women are half the population. They own 42% of businesses. They pay their taxes. And every year of your life, anybody that's watching this and hear my voice and see my face right now, every year of your life, companies owned by men have gotten between 95 and 97% of every penny the government spends. That needs to change. And I started a project called Don't Cheat Women. You can look it up on the internet, don'tcheatwomen.com. And that was part of Bobby Kennedy's economic stimulus program to raise the federal goal for woman-owned small businesses from 5% up to 25%. The Senate Small Business Committee did a report a decade ago that said for every 1% contracts for small businesses go up, it'll create 100,000 net new jobs. So if Trump adopts Kennedy's economic program for women and gives women an additional 20% of federal contracts, that will double the number of new jobs created in America on an annual basis. Hear that? It will double it. By the way, if Kennedy's plan is fully implemented, it will triple the number of net new jobs created in America. And the people in the Pentagon are going to say, oh, you can't do that. It's impossible. Bullshit. It's easy. It'd be very easy to implement Bobby Kennedy's economic stimulus program. Let Elon Musk end all the waste and fraud and corruption in government. Musk says he can cut $2 trillion a year out of a federal budget. Easy. You can do that easy. Hell, 35 trillion missing. Right? So let Musk do that. The next one is let Bobby Kennedy do whatever he wants. Let Bobby Kennedy do whatever he wants to do, anywhere he wants to do it. When he was running for president, he had this huge agenda. All of it was going to be great for the American people. Trump needs to let him do anything he wants, okay? On this particular list, the last one is find who was behind the plot to assassinate Trump. You'll never convince me that guy acted alone. You'll never do it. I know that it was a conspiracy. It was a plot. They saw that guy on the roof. I think I've seen the shortest time I saw was 21 minutes, and I've seen almost an hour, right? There needs to be a hardcore, serious investigation into that and find out who was responsible.
Thank you, Lloyd, for all of those. Let me reflect on some of the things that you just shared. I pray to God that he would never disparage, mock, insult anybody ever again. If he just adopted that as a rule,
Yeah,
it would go far to clean up 80% of the self-inflicted drag he puts on his
yeah,
popularity and effectiveness.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. Um, I kind of think that in reality, Trump's going to turn the administration over to his team. I really believe that. I believe that
Wow.
the kind of person he is, the kind of the age he is, he's going to turn it over to JD Vance, Kennedy, Musk, Tulsi, and Nicole. I believe that. And Tucker Carlson and Vivek. I'm not a big fan of the Vivek guy, but I think he's gonna delegate. That's what I think. I think Trump's going to delegate, which is good because the people he's got to delegate it to.
No one is mentioning COVID-19, the murderous results of the government protocols and reaction and mandates in terms of lockdowns and masks.
Yeah,
And Lloyd, no one is talking about the body counts and the injuries and the paralysis and the cancers that are exploding
yeah.
following the implementation of the COVID vaccines. Trump's not mentioning it. Bobby's not mentioning it anymore. But I'm going to always mention it
It's
because
going to come out. It's going to come out.
I believe. Why do you believe so? I know why I think so. Why do you think so?
Because I think that Bobby Kennedy, uh, I'll say the gloves are off.
Wow.
When he was running for president, you have to conduct yourself a certain way. Now I think he's going to expose all that. I really do. The COVID response was designed to make money for the pharmaceutical industry, and they made billions, right? So everything, when you look at foreign policy, small businesses, COVID, agriculture, everything, it's all about making money for the Fortune 500 firms. And so the way the government handled the response to COVID was to make money for Fortune 500 firms, right? Not take care of the American people, right?
Well,
But to
and
make
also it
money.
was implemented because it was implemented to make money, to do the things that would make money, but hand in glove with an intentional, with other agendas like sickening and debilitating us, and also getting us used to living remotely, not going anywhere to work, not going anywhere to shop, living from home, shopping from home on our computers, and testing how compliant they could make us digitally. Will we get vaccine apps that show that we jump through the hoops and hurdles of digital slavery? Because that's what it indicates as a long-term agenda, a technocracy, a digital technical slavery.
Yep, yep.
And hopefully, I think it might, if it comes out, Lloyd, it's also going to come out not because people are going to be brave like they must, like Kennedy must be brave enough to talk about these things. But my impression is the way people are getting sick, it will soon be undeniable. We will not be able to talk about anything else. And hopefully, there
Yeah.
will be indictments and trials and convictions. And many people say this escalates to intentional murder or treason. So that's the kind of punishment that many outraged and harmed people who've lost a lot of loved ones have brought it up to that level. We're at a pretty good length for an episode, Lloyd. Are you
Yeah.
comfortable
You know
swinging
what?
some final thoughts?
Let's do another episode. I've got another 15 points, right? But I think it's appropriate for us to talk about, what needs to be done now for, the next 6 months, right? That's a great topic. So
It's
I've got
fantastic.
another 15 points that we
It's a
can talk about
it's
next time. But yeah, we need to talk
yeah
about this.
yeah
This is
yeah.
probably the main thing we need to talk about for an extended period of time,
I
right?
completely agree because, like Naomi Wolf alludes in that article, and I want everybody to go to her Substack and read that thing. What Trump needs to do down. She goes into much more depth than I alluded to about what's at stake with the messaging and if Trump would grow a freaking brain. I hope that everyone who can possibly get her perspective into the hands of Bobby and Nicole and even to Trump and Tucker to energize and improve the quality of Trump's messaging as president-elect would go far, making him effective with the good things that he wants to do. So those are my final. Are we good?
Yep.
All
Yep.
right.
Yep. One last quick thing. If Trump doesn't recognize that 99.9% of U.S. firms are small businesses and adopt economic policies based on that reality, he's an idiot and it won't work.
We're going to hold him to it, Lloyd,
All
because
right.
he can't know everything, but he can be told everything.
Yeah.
So that's our job.
All
All right,
right.
I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody for watching and listening.